a consensus protocol.
All right. Then other forms of consensus, like for example, I know Eternity uses proof of work and proof of stake, a mixture of those. Can you explain why Eternity uses that? And yeah, so for what reason?
So we like the idea of having a proof of stake generally, but not for building of blocks or having a consensus on the next block, because I think um, proof of stake introduces a lot of uncertainties and really kind of abstracts the whole consensus building system. And I think we're not there yet in terms of good proof of stake protocols or working proof of stake protocols. They only they always result in some kind of a centralization or introduce some attack vectors which you don't have with proof of work. So that's why we decided um, to keep the consensus on who is creating the blocks uh, to proof of work, and to have a different kind of mechanism for the on-chain governance, and this is the so-called proof of stake. Proof of, I wouldn't call it actually proof of stake still, because there will be no staking. So proof of stake is it's usually related to the governance,
Mm-hmm.
and when it comes to Eternity, of course, and it means that anyone who has some amount of AE tokens will be able to use those tokens in order to like announce their opinion on a subject or to reply to a question. So how, if it was proof of stake, this would have meant that they will need to stake their amount of AE tokens and for some time period, and then once this period ends and they have provided their vote, they get some kind of a reward back. So basically, they in the community they call it passive income or proof of stake mining. I would say you staking the coins, you're participating in the mining of the blocks. You're basically a miner, but a new type of miner, and you get some small amount of fees back for this service. In our case, it's not like this. What you need to do, or what the user will need to do, is simply sign a transaction with their account balance, which means that they don't have to transfer the AE tokens, they don't have to stake them or lock them. They simply sign a transaction um, with their address. So let's say you have 1,000 AE, and there is a question: should we reduce the mining reward from 1,000 AE to 500 AE?
Mm-hmm.
What you need to do is simply use the wallet application, use the voting application to sign a transaction with your balance, and you basically signing a transaction, providing this signed transaction to the application, and let's say you're voting yes. The yes vote gets 1,000 A tokens weight more because you have signed it. You have signed a transaction. You have participated in the governance. So basically, the governance can be used in two ways, primarily a formal and an informal way. The informal way is basically you can ask any question. You can ask the community any question. For example, should Eternity participate in the next consensus conference, let's say? And anyone who has AE tokens can can sign a transaction and can provide the weight of their tokens to either yes or no.
Yeah.
So this is the informal way, and also the team can use this. We can ask the community, do you think that the partnership with company X is a good idea? And the community can say yes or no with their token balance. Um, so this is the informal way, but there will also be a formal way of using this or using your AE, and that will be for changing fundamental system variables. For example, um, uh, the example that I gave was the mining reward. So should we reduce the mining reward that the miners get from 1,000 to 500, or the miners get per block, or should we increase the size of the block, or um, yeah, I mean any kind of I've really like fundamental things about the system, for the fundamental uh, parameters of the
Yeah.
system,
Yeah.
and we believe that this could be very helpful in a way that it could allow the system to adapt to different changes. So, for example, if as in currently in Bitcoin, if you believe, or the community of AE holders believe that the block size is too little and people are paying too much for their transactions, let's say, they can someone can announce this as a question, and and anyone from the community can participate in the voting procedure, sign transactions, and if the vote is yes, let's increase the block size, then the block size increase. I guess there will be like different options. Like for example, if it was 1 MB, it could be 2, 5, 10, and anyone can sign a transaction on which size they think is the most appropriate one. And if this gets passed, if this gets passed, then the block size is increased. Um, and this is the governance. This is the proof of, let's call it the proof of stake part of the whole thing. Although I wouldn't call it proof of stake anymore. It's just governance.
Yeah.
And then proof of work. We have proof of work is it's going to be done in a very we're going to implement an innovative proof of work mining algorithm. It's called Kuckoo Cycle, and it's graph theoretic. It's very memory bound, which means that basically it relies on memory primarily. Like you need a lot of good memory, very efficient memory to be able to mine. It's kind of close to the Zcash mining algorithm, which I forgot the name of. Um, but yes,
Was it
so the idea behind
K
that.
snarks or something?
No, ZK Snarks
ZK
is
snarks.
something different.
Yeah.
I forgot the
Yeah,
name of
it's
the
okay.
Zcash one. Equihash.
Equihash. Yeah.
It's called Equihash. Um, so the idea behind Kuckoo Cycle is to really try to keep mining as decentralized as possible for as long as possible. So it is hard to create ASICs who can mine with Kuckoo Cycle, but I wouldn't say it's impossible. I think it's going to happen at some point in time, but it's harder than other mining algorithms. Um, and and the other thing is that public pools are also problematic to create. So you can create some private pools. You can like mine individually, or maybe organize a small local pool. But large pools are hard to create. So this is again in terms of decentralization, which is I think one of the primary features of public blockchain platforms. We have tried to address this with Kuckoo Cycle. And also we spoke about mobile mining. Actually, yesterday Apple announced that they will not allow mobile mining to happen on their devices, or mining to happen on their devices. So iPhone users will have a hard time to mine on with their devices. Um, but so we are currently trying to investigate the situation, what can be done, and so forth. And we will announce if I mean when mobile mining is available, or I mean, does it make sense to introduce mobile mining since a large part of the world we will not be able to mine. But we are currently investigating, so we will let the community know if this will be possible, when this will be possible. Um, and again, like related to mining, as I mentioned, Bitcoin NG, we implementing this blockchain protocol for mining. So it means that miners who find a block on Eternity will be allowed to create a number of smaller blocks directly because they have found the larger block. And this is how basically Bitcoin NG works. in Bitcoin, when the miner finds a block, like everyone is looking for a block, and when this block is found, everybody starts to look for the next block. In Bitcoin NG is similar, but when a miner finds a block, and in that block includes, let's say, 1,000 transactions or 2,000 transactions, he can start creating these smaller blocks until the next block is found. So basically, he'll be able to verify transactions much more quickly than in the original, let's say, Bitcoin, or how Bitcoin currently functions. And this will allow for transactions per second on chain to hopefully reach at least, or to be around 100 transactions per second,
Yeah.
which is quite more than a lot more than the currently allowed transaction limit in Bitcoin, which is 7 transactions, and in Ethereum, I think it's about 12 transactions per second. So we're going to 100 transactions per second with Bitcoin NG. So yeah, for the miners, this could also be good, since they, apart from the transactions which they verify in their main block, they will get the fees from the other transactions that they verify after the main of this big block. So yeah, the idea here is, again, when it comes to more specifically Kuckoo Cycle, to keep the blockchain as decentralized as possible for as long as possible.
Yeah. So I see, yeah, you guys value decentralization, or you guys have built the blockchain with quite some core principles in mind. Um,
Definitely, yes.
so talking, so in that idea, or thinking about that, um, you normally you have blockchains. They're not guided by, I wouldn't say per se guided by principles and values, but that's
Mhm.
not really put in a given a light. So I was wondering what drives and what are the values of the Eternity team. So why are you guys doing what you guys are doing, and what's the main
Yeah.
reason that you guys are doing what you guys are doing?
Actually, this is a very, very important point, because when people think about blockchain, I think they're thinking about more of a, I don't know, like the business case
Yeah,
for a blockchain.
yeah,
Um, and I think it's more of a philosophy about the world, about how the world functions, about how economic transactions happen, about money, about governance. So as I said in the beginning, when I went into Bitcoin, I found out quickly that it's a very multidisciplinary field, and actually, it's very, very true. And the blockchain, the Eternity blockchain, I would say it's a vision. You can even call it a movement about how how we think the world should function in a different way. I wouldn't say a better way, because I mean, time will tell.
yeah,
This is all R&D. Everybody is trying to improve these systems, but we believe it could be even a better way. But it's an alternative to what currently exists, and I think blockchain technology is the only alternative to a lot of very complex systems that we have created throughout the centuries, that the humankind has created around centuries, like including institutions and parties which kind of organize our global economy. And we believe that blockchains could be a way to provide an alternative, which is actually not being created in any other way. So we think that there is a new way of doing transactions online. There is a new way that you can work. There is a new way that you can organize yourself. Like you organize your company, organize your party, or like do governance of, like, maybe for large groups of people to
yeah,
organize yourselves. And we believe that the blockchains can be the answer to this. Um, Basically, the philosophy behind Eternity is that there are certain issues in the world. We have too many concentrations of large amounts of power, and
yeah,
there are a number of small groups of people who can basically say what you can do or you cannot do.
yeah,
And I think, I mean, there should be some kind of rules, of course, when it comes to a system, when it comes to governance, but these rules should be like a community set. You can build the rules yourself, and they could be as effective or even more effective than the currently established rules by a handful of, let's say, elites.
Yeah.
Um, and basically, we believe that it's possible that through technology, basically, to become a little more free than you currently are. And this is also related to finance. I mean, you don't have to. I think the world is moving in a different direction. Like it so far, it was you work for a company, and that company takes care of you, and you can, if you want, you can work for that company for your entire life. But now these digital nomads have appeared for a number of years. People are more and more like working online. They have these things that they can do online from any part of in the world. The internet is omnipresent, and it's connecting everybody around the world. And the internet is the core protocol on which actually blockchains are possible to exist.
Yeah.
So I think it's a natural blockchains are a natural evolution. First, the internet revolutionized how information gets shared, and now I think with blockchain, they will revolutionize how money gets transferred or money gets created, how companies function, and so on. And very importantly, I think um, blockchains are an exercise in new types of governance structures. Not only like the technological point of blockchains that you can create these digital assets, or let's call them money or whatever. This is just one point of it. The other point, which is very, very interesting, is about governance. And governance, it has evolved throughout the years, and it was affected by technology. And these institutions that we have created that manage our daily lives, they were created because there was no other way to organize society. But now with technology, I think you can try to organize society, or at least your company, in a different way. And all these consensus protocols, consensus mechanisms, they're basically a very concentrated R&D or research and development in governance, which happens much, much more quickly than it has happened in the last, let's say, 200, 300, or even 1,000 years,
Yeah.
where you create a society and you see our community, you see how it functions, and then like it takes years for it to fail. I think now with all these ICOs or like blockchain projects, you can test how you can organize a group of people to follow a single goal much more quickly, or if not, to fail much more quickly and say, no, this is not working. Let's try something else. And all these maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of projects that exist out there are trying to create these little economies that that could, at least one of them or five of them will be the right way forward, and most of them will fail. And this will happen in the span of 2 years, let's say, while governance mechanisms um, so far has taken maybe tens of years or hundreds of years to get verified or and then
Yeah.
rejected,
Yeah.
let's say. And I think this is very interesting for like for society, for the future.
Yeah.
And Eternity blockchain is simply an expression of this idea that we have a certain view of how the world can function, and we're trying to create one of the best uh, like technologically capable platforms, so that this vision gets really spread around or used or commercially successful. People really start looking into that, start using it. And I think with the use, they might start thinking about how the world functions,
Yeah.
and why this is, I mean, why this could be a better way of organizing, let's say, a company or a group of people generally. So the philosophy is simply um, providing an
Alternative. Yeah.
alternative vision for how the world is organized.
Yeah, we are practically moving from institutions of hierarchies to markets, to where,
Exactly.
platforms where people can just interact with each other without sacrificing some of their values, and it's a little bit more decentralized when compared to conventional institutions. Yeah,
Exactly, exactly. And to provide more people, more freedom to people. You don't have to be working for a single company. You
yeah,
can be working for 20 companies at the same time,
yeah,
providing different services, living in the mountains somewhere where you feel good.
yeah.
Don't have to be like what is it, a desk slave.
A
Just
wage slave.
yeah, just basically to allow you to be a bit more free.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's also it also allows a little bit for another way of sharing. Because this whole idea of shared protocols other than the internet didn't really exist before. So
Hmm.
it's interesting to see these things happening in this sphere, and it's also very important that the blockchains or the blockchain projects that come along, that they have this philosophy in mind as well, and not just build for the sake of building, because then
Yeah.
you're just you're just utilizing, you're just applying technology, but you're not applying it with a specific goal or principle or some values in mind, which
Oh, definitely, definitely. I would say Eternity is really composed of people who are believers in this, let's say, the brave new world
yeah,
that could be realized through blockchain technology. Um, it's for me personally, especially, it's more really a philosophy. I was in love with Bitcoin and the idea behind Bitcoin.
yeah,
Actually, everybody, actually, most people in the project are also fans of Bitcoin, and I think Bitcoin was the first step in the right direction, and all these other blockchain projects that exist out there, blockchain platforms that can allow for the creation of decentralized applications, I think they are the next step, or they are continuing the revolution, which has started with Bitcoin.
yeah,
So for me, it's a very very interesting experiment. The whole sphere, actually, it's a really really interesting experiment, and I would like to see how it goes. And I'm super glad that I'm participating like really firsthand in it. It's a super exciting sphere. I would really suggest everyone to start like really getting into blockchain technology and the philosophy behind it, and to see how this philosophy gets hopefully implemented in the real world
yeah,
or fails. I mean, nobody can say what's going to happen. It's an experiment,
yeah,
but I think it's really it's a worthy cause to participate in something like this, because otherwise you're just following the flow or going with the flow. You're not providing viable alternatives to the monopolies of power that currently
yeah,
exists.
exactly.
These the ledger masters,
Yeah.
which kind of provide you with
Your
yeah with
basic needs,
and dictate they dictate your life, your life, or the way of life that you can have.
Yeah, yeah,
uh, and we also have a lot of people who don't have access to a lot of basic services. More than 3 billion people exist out there. They don't have any access to a number of banking services, to transfer services. And I think blockchain technology, because of its efficiency and because of the fact that it's open and anyone can participate, anyone can start using it, I think it's going to open a lot of doors for these people to really participate more in the global society.
yeah. I